Nora Kendrick didn't expect her day to start with sprinting toward Gate B17 barefoot, holding a half-eaten muffin in one hand and her phone flashing a red 1% battery warning in the other. She skidded to a stop at the gate, heart pounding, only to hear the dreaded announcement. Flight 407 to Chicago is delayed due to mechanical issues. Estimated boarding time, 1 hour. Of course it is, she muttered, bending over to catch her breath. Dropping onto the nearest empty seat, she dug through her tote bag, pulling out her charger, only to spot a guy a few chairs down frantically patting his pockets like he'd lost something important. I swear I had it in my carry-on, he muttered to himself. She cleared her throat. Looking for a charger? He turned and wow. Tall, dark hair, sharp jawline, navy suit that somehow looked like it was tailored just for him. He raised an eyebrow, eyes locking with hers. Phone's dying, he admitted. And I've got a meeting I can't miss. Nora held up her charger. You can borrow mine. I've got time. Delayed flight. He hesitated, then gave her a nod. That'd be a lifesaver. She handed it over and he sat beside her, plugging in immediately. Thanks. I'm Preston Shaw, by the way. Nora Kendrick. Preston glanced sideways at her. You just saved my morning, Nora Kendrick. She chuckled. It's just a charger. Yeah, but I had a call with Tokyo in 10 minutes. You might have saved a multi-million-dollar deal. Then I should have charged you. He laughed, low and warm. I'll owe you one. They sat in silence for a minute. The only sound the hum of the airport and the occasional announcement. Preston scrolled through his phone, then looked over again. So what takes you to Chicago? Nora shrugged. Interview. Marketing firm. Nothing glamorous. You're in marketing? Trying to be, she said. I freelance right now, hoping for something more stable. Preston nodded, thoughtful. You any good at it? Not to brag, but I once sold $5,000 worth of handmade candles in under 3 hours. He let out a surprised laugh. Okay, that's impressive. What about you? She asked. Besides Tokyo meetings and expensive suits. He looked at her for a beat, then said, I run a company. Like a startup? No. Like Shaw and Grant. Nora blinked. Wait, the Shaw and Grant? You're the CEO. He gave a small, almost boyish smile. Guilty. She stared at him. I just lent my charger to a guy whose company probably owns half of downtown Manhattan. Not quite half, he said, grinning but close. She laughed, shaking her head. Do you always hang out at airport gates like a normal person? Only when the jet's being refueled, he teased. Of course. Their flight was called an hour later, and they ended up sitting just 1 row apart on the plane. Preston passed her charger back before they boarded, brushing her hand lightly as he did. Thanks again, he said. Seriously. No problem. Hope you crush Tokyo. He paused. You know, if your interview doesn't go well, come work for me. Nora raised an eyebrow. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said, then boarded. She stared after him, confused and slightly breathless. At baggage claim, she didn't expect to see him again. But there he was, waiting beside her with his coat over one arm and his suitcase by his side. Let me guess, she said. Your driver bailed on you. No, he said. I'm waiting for you. Her heart skipped. Why? Dinner, he said simply. I've got a reservation at a place that has wine worth more than my car, and I'd rather not eat alone. She stared at him, stunned. Unless you hate wine, he added. Or me. She bit her lip, then smiled. Lead the way. The restaurant was tucked into a high-rise hotel with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The hostess greeted Preston by name and led them to a private table with a view of the skyline. You weren't kidding, she said, glancing around. He shrugged off his coat and helped her with hers. I don't do halfway. A waiter appeared with champagne, and Preston poured them each a glass. To borrow chargers, he said, raising his glass. To Tokyo deals, she countered. They clinked glasses. Dinner was easy. Conversation flowed. He asked about her freelancing, her favorite cities, why she hated pineapple on pizza. She learned he'd taken over the company at 28 after his father's stroke, that he worked 18-hour days, and that the last real vacation he took was 4 years ago. I've spent so much time building this empire, he said, swirling his wine. Sometimes I forget what it's like to just be. Be what? Human, he said, then glanced at her. You make it feel easy. That silenced her. After dessert, they stood outside the restaurant under the soft glow of the marquee. I can get you a car, he said. She shook her head. I'm staying 2 blocks away. He hesitated. Would it be crazy if I asked to see you again? She smiled. It'd be crazier if you didn't. He laughed at that same warm sound from the gate and stepped closer. I don't usually do this, he said. Lend your charger to strangers? He grinned. Fall for people this fast. Nora's breath caught, but she didn't look away. Then maybe you should do it more often. He leaned in, not kissing her, just close enough that she could feel it. This isn't going to be simple. I don't want simple, she whispered. I want real. They stood like that for a moment, the world quiet around them. And just like that, a charger at gate B17 turned into the beginning of something neither of them saw coming. 3 days after that dinner, Nora stood in the glossy marble lobby of Shaw and Grant, clutching her portfolio and trying not to stare at the 20-foot chandelier suspended like frozen fireworks above the reception desk. Ms. Kendrick. A woman in a sleek gray dress approached with a clipboard and a Bluetooth in her ear. Mr. Shaw's expecting you. I thought I was meeting with your marketing director. You are. But Mr. Shaw asked to sit in. Nora followed the woman through a maze of glass-walled offices and conference rooms until they stopped at a set of double doors. The assistant knocked once and pushed them open. Preston stood by the window, his jacket off, sleeves rolled up, phone tucked between shoulder and ear, nodding as he scribbled something on a legal pad. He looked up when he saw her, and the change in his expression was instant. Give me 5, he said into the phone. I'll call you back. He hung up and gestured to one of the chairs across from his desk. You came. I wasn't sure if this was a real job meeting or a trap, Nora said, settling into the seat. That depends. Were you hoping for a job or breakfast with me again? He asked. She tilted her head. I'll accept a salary and a croissant in that order. He laughed and stepped around the desk. The director will be here in a minute. I just wanted to say this isn't charity. I saw your campaign breakdowns. You've got instincts most execs spend years trying to force. That almost sounds like a compliment. It's a promise, he said. I don't play games with my company. There was a soft knock and a woman with tightly curled hair and sharp eyes stepped in. Sorry I'm late. Preston nodded. Diana, this is Nora Kendrick. Give her whatever she needs. He turned to Nora. You'll do great. I'll see you when you come up for air. The interview was long but fast-paced. Diana was sharp, focused, and didn't waste time with fluff. She grilled Nora on branding strategies, client retention rates, and digital engagement models. Nora answered every question without flinching, her confidence growing with each slide she presented. When it was over, Diana stood and extended her hand. You've got something. We'll send you an offer by tomorrow. Nora rode the elevator down in a daze, her phone buzzing before she even reached the lobby. Come to the roof, Preston said when she answered. You're already in the building. She hesitated, but curiosity won. The elevator to the rooftop required a keycard. A suited man was already waiting when she arrived. Mr. Shaw asked me to bring you up. The rooftop was nothing like she expected. It wasn't a helipad or some slick chrome lounge. It was a garden. Real grass, olive trees, benches tucked between hedges. A narrow path wound around a reflecting pool where koi fish drifted lazily beneath the surface. Preston stood near a pergola draped in white climbing roses, his phone in one hand, coffee in the other. This is yours, she asked, stepping out into the sunlight. I come up here when I need to think. You have koi fish in the middle of downtown. They're not mine. The building owns them. I just feed them more than anyone else. She walked to his side, watching the water. You're full of surprises. I try. How'd it go? Offer's coming tomorrow. Good, he said. I told you you'd do great. She studied him. Why does someone like you care whether I work here? He met her gaze. Because you're not just talented. You're honest. You don't try to impress people. And I like that. I didn't ask for special treatment. You didn't get any. She sat on the edge of the bench. So what now? I work for your company and we pretend that dinner never happened. He didn't answer right away. Then he sat beside her. We figure it out. I'm not going to disappear just because things get complicated. I've had enough complications, she said softly. I need steady things. I've never been steady, he said, voice low. But I could try. She looked at him, searching for cracks in the charm, a tell that this was just another rich man's whim. But there was something in his eyes, something steadying in itself. Don't promise things you can't keep, she said. I don't make promises I don't intend to fight for. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant hum of city traffic and the rustle of leaves overhead. She stood. Then I guess we'll see who wins. I don't play games, he said as he rose too. Good, she replied. Neither do I. The next morning her offer arrived. A full-time position with a competitive salary, benefits, and her own office on the 16th floor. But what caught her off guard wasn't the title or the pay. It was the note attached. It read only, lunch Friday. No shop talk. Just us. Say yes. She didn't say yes right away. She let it sit. 2 days later, she stepped into the restaurant lobby, not sure if she was making a mistake or the best decision of her life. He was already waiting, back to her, speaking to the host. When he turned and saw her, he didn't grin or act smug. He just walked toward her like someone who'd been sure she would come. You're late, he said. I had to make sure I wouldn't regret it. And I guess we'll find out. Nora's heels echoed down the corridor leading to the executive floor, her pulse ticking in time with each step. Friday lunch had turned into Friday dinners, then Saturdays, then late-night calls that left her falling asleep with a grin she didn't know she could still wear. But now, 3 weeks into her new role, she stood outside Preston's office door with a folder that could change everything. She knocked once. Come in, he called. The view behind him was all glass and thunderclouds, the city drenched in a gray wash. Preston didn't look up as she stepped inside, his attention fixed on a document open before him. I need 5 minutes, she said, setting the folder on his desk. He glanced up, eyebrows raised. Trouble? No. Opportunity. He closed the file he'd been reading and leaned back in his chair. Let's hear it. I found a gap in the rollout for the Reynolds campaign. The analytics don't match the projections. We've been targeting the wrong demographic. She flipped open the folder and slid it toward him. If we pivot now, we can salvage the launch. Preston scanned the page, expression unreadable. You caught this on your own? Yes. I verified the data twice. I didn't want to bring it to Diana until I was certain. He set the folder down. If you're right, this could mean millions in redirected spend. I know. You've been here less than a month. I'm not here to linger in the background. He stood and walked to the window, arms crossed. You realize this is going to ruffle feathers. I'm not here to make friends either. His gaze shifted to her reflection in the glass. That's not what I meant. I know, she said softly. But I didn't come here to be careful. He turned back to her. You sure you're ready for the fallout? Let it fall. There was a beat of quiet before he nodded once. I'll call a meeting. You present this. She hesitated. You sure Diana won't object? If she does, I'll remind her why I hired you. After she left his office, the rest of the day moved in a blur of preparation. By the time she stood in the boardroom the next morning, presenting to a half-circle of senior executives, some of whom barely concealed their skepticism, Nora's nerves had turned to steel. When she finished, the silence was thick. Diana spoke first. How did we miss this? Nora didn't flinch. We trusted outdated trend data. I recalculated based on last quarter's engagement shifts and current buying behaviors. Another exec, a man with silver temples and a reputation for being impossible to impress, leaned forward. And you're suggesting we restructure the current launch window? Yes. We delay by 2 weeks, adjust our content, and redirect budget to the emerging segment. The original plan will underperform. Preston's voice cut through the murmur that followed. I've seen the numbers. She's right. The meeting ended with reluctant nods and sudden urgency. Nora walked out with her pulse steady and her shoulders squared. Later that evening, she found herself standing in Preston's kitchen while he stirred something on the stove that smelled faintly of garlic and rosemary. Let me guess, she said, kicking off her shoes. You're secretly a culinary genius. He raised an eyebrow. I'm capable of boiling water without setting off the fire alarm. That's enough for tonight. Is this your idea of a victory meal? She asked, leaning against the counter. No, he said. It's my idea of a quiet night with you. She watched him for a moment, then reached for the wine bottle beside him and began pouring 2 glasses. You didn't have to back me up in that meeting, she said after a moment. He set the spoon down. I didn't back you up. I agreed with you. There's a difference. Backing someone up is loyalty. Agreeing is trust. She handed him a glass. And which one do I get? He looked at her, eyes serious. Both. That quiet stretched between them again, the kind that felt full rather than empty. You've been different lately, she said, watching him. He leaned against the counter beside her. How so? Less guarded. Less rehearsed. I used to think I had to be made of steel to keep this company standing, he said. But it turns out steel doesn't feel much. And now I'm learning to bend. Nora took a sip of her wine, not breaking his gaze. That sounds dangerous. It is, he said. But so is everything worth having. After dinner, they sat on the couch, legs tangled, the city lights flickering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Preston rested his hand on her knee, fingers absent-mindedly tracing a circle, his voice quieter now. My father never let anyone in, he said. Not even my mother. He built walls so high no one could touch him until his body gave out before his pride did. She didn't interrupt. I told myself I'd never be like him, he continued. But I didn't realize how easy it is to become someone you swore you wouldn't. You're not him. I was on the way. She reached up, brushing her fingers along his jaw. Then you stopped. He caught her hand gently, pressing it to his chest. Because of you. Her breath hitched, but she didn't look away. He leaned in, and this time when he kissed her, it wasn't new or uncertain. It was earned. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. This is going to get complicated. I'm counting on it, he whispered. And outside, the storm finally broke, rain streaking across the windows like ink on glass. But inside, wrapped in warmth and flickering candlelight, neither of them moved. Because for the first time in years, neither of them wanted to run. The elevator doors slid open to the top floor of the Conrad Hotel, revealing a ballroom bathed in golden light and filled with Chicago's elite. Strings of lights hung from the vaulted ceiling like constellations, and a quartet played near the back, their music elegant but unobtrusive. Nora stepped in, her breath catching as the sheer scale of the gala unfolded before her. She scanned the room, already feeling the weight of the evening pressing on her shoulders. Diana had insisted the entire marketing department attend the company's annual investor celebration. Nora hadn't realized until she got the formal invitation that it was less a work function and more a showcase of alliances, money, and power. Nora, a voice called near the champagne tower. She turned to find Diana beckoning her over, eyes sharp, lips painted a deep garnet. They're watching tonight, Diana said the moment Nora reached her. The backers, the old guard, the press. Stand tall. I didn't plan on shrinking, Nora replied, lifting her chin. Good, Diana said, then leaned in slightly. Because Preston's walking in with the architect from the Langford project. Someone's trying to stir the pot. Nora didn't respond right away. She didn't need to look to know which woman Diana meant. A tall brunette with a designer neckline plunging dangerously low and a hand already laced through Preston's arm. Nora didn't flinch. Instead, she turned and reached for a glass of champagne from a passing tray. Preston's eyes found her almost immediately. He said something to the woman beside him, then made his way toward Nora with that purposeful stride she could now recognize from across any room. I didn't know you'd be here early, he said once he reached her. I wasn't, she replied. You were late. His mouth curved slightly, but there was something searching in his eyes. We should talk. I'm sure your company can survive one evening without us talking, she said, her voice even. He glanced around. Not here. I agree. She turned and walked toward the terrace, not needing to look back to know he was following her. The warm air outside was a balm against the tension tightening her chest. You brought a date, she said without turning around. I didn't, he said. She asked for a ride, not a ring. That's convenient. She's trying to land a commercial contract, he added. And she knows I don't mix business with pleasure, which is probably why she thought showing up on my arm would be strategic. Nora finally faced him, arms crossed. And what do I count as, Preston? Strategy? No, he said. You're the exception. Then why parade someone else into your own gala like I'm invisible? Because I didn't know if you'd be okay with the world knowing. With us being. This, he said, gesturing between them. I didn't want to put you in a spotlight you didn't ask for. I didn't ask for any of this, she said, voice low. But I also didn't ask to feel like I'm being kept behind a curtain. He stepped closer, the noise from inside muffled by the heavy glass doors. You're not behind anything. I just didn't want to risk turning what we have into a headline. I'm not fragile, Preston. I know you're not, he said. But I've seen what this world does to people who don't play it carefully. She met his gaze, heart pounding. Then let them watch. The tension in his shoulders seemed to shift, like something unspoken finally snapped loose. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I was going to wait until after the gala, he said. But you just made up my mind. She stared at the box, her breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a question. He opened it slowly, revealing a delicate gold bracelet with a single sapphire in the center. It's not a ring, he said quickly. But that's not because I'm unsure. It's because I want to start with a promise before I make one. She blinked, unable to speak. I want to build a life with you, Nora. Not one that fits into my schedule or my board meetings. One that makes space for you to grow, to lead, to be exactly who you are. She took the bracelet from the box, fingers brushing his. This isn't about jewelry, is it? No, he said. It's about you knowing that I'm all in. And I'm not hiding you from anyone. She clasped the bracelet around her wrist, the stone catching the light just as the doors opened behind them. A photographer stepped out, followed by a reporter she recognized from the city's society column. Preston didn't flinch. He simply took her hand and led her back inside. He didn't let go. The rest of the night unfolded like a film Nora wasn't sure she'd been cast in. People stared. Some whispered. But most simply watched as Preston introduced her not as a colleague or someone new to the team, but as Nora Kendrick, the reason our Reynolds campaign is going to break records. He didn't mention her title. He didn't mention her resume. He just gave her credit without condition or pretension. By the time the last investor left and the quartet packed up their instruments, Nora found herself back on the empty dance floor, shoes in one hand, bracelet glinting on her wrist. Preston joined her, tie loosened, jacket gone. Dance with me, he said. There's no music. Then I'll hum. He pulled her close, one hand settling around her waist, the other taking hers. He began to hum something low, familiar, and off-key. She laughed, resting her head against his chest. You're terrible at this. Then you'll have to teach me, he said. The only sound was their slow steps against polished floors and his heartbeat beneath her cheek. I never expected you, she whispered. I didn't expect you either, he said. But I'm not letting go. Good, she said. Because I'm not planning to run. Eventually, they made their way out of the ballroom, past the cleanup crew and the fading lights. Outside, the city was quiet, awash in silver from the street lamps. A black car waited at the curb, driver standing by, door already open. But Preston didn't lead her there. Instead, he took her hand and pulled her toward the other side of the building where a sleek motorcycle sat under the awning. He handed her a helmet. You trust me. She raised an eyebrow. That depends. Do you drive like you run your company? Faster, he said. She smiled, slipping the helmet on. Then take me somewhere the skyline disappears. And he did. They rode through the city, past the steel and glass, past the noise, until the road opened up and the lights fell behind them. And all that remained was wind, warmth, and a future unfolding in the space between them. They didn't speak again until the engine went quiet and the stars blinked above a quiet lake. Preston turned to her, eyes searching. So what now? He asked. She reached for his hand. Now we build the life we didn't expect. And this time there were no questions left between them. Only answers and the beginning of everything they never saw coming. Nora stood in front of the mirror, smoothing the ivory silk gown that clung to her curves like it had been made for her, and it had. Preston had insisted on having it custom designed, and when she'd protested the expense, he'd only said, "Let me give you things that match the way I see you." Now, as she stepped into the sunlit garden behind the estate in Lake Forest, the scent of wild roses and lavender drifted in the breeze. Rows of white chairs lined the lawn, filled with familiar faces from the company, from her old freelance days, and from the life they had built together in the past year. She walked slowly, heart thudding like a drum beneath her ribs, toward the man waiting at the altar beneath a canopy of magnolia blossoms. Preston stood in a charcoal suit, no tie, a single white rose pinned to his lapel. He didn't look like the unreachable CEO she had first met at the airport. He looked like the man who made her coffee when she was too tired to speak, who stayed up late reading her client proposals, who held her when she cried after her mother's health scare 3 months ago. "Hi," she whispered as she reached him. His eyes didn't leave hers. "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." The officiant gave them a moment, letting the hush settle over the guests like reverence. Then the ceremony began, simple, sincere, every word chosen with care. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, filled with promises about real things: trust, laughter, late-night brainstorming sessions, and never going to bed angry. When it was over and their hands were joined with the band of gold that would never come off, Preston leaned down and kissed her slowly, deliberately, like they had all the time in the world. They did. Afterward, the reception unfolded beneath a tent strung with hanging lights and crystal chandeliers. Preston had insisted on catering from the chef who ran their favorite hidden bistro downtown, the same one where he'd once accidentally spilled Bordeaux on her blouse during their second real date. She'd laughed so hard he'd kissed her just to shut her up. Now, that same chef served them roasted sea bass with lemon risotto and a vanilla bean cake layered with fresh strawberries. Guests danced on a floor built over the grass, and Diana gave a toast that was surprisingly heartfelt. "She changed this company," Diana said, raising her glass. But more than that, she changed him. Preston tugged Nora away from the crowd just after sunset, leading her to a small stone path that wound through the trees behind the estate. "I want to show you something," he said. She followed him without asking. The path opened to a clearing where a glass-walled studio stood tucked among the trees. Inside, it was filled with floor-to-ceiling whiteboards, a drafting table, and a long wall of windows that looked out over the lake. "We're going to build your agency here," he said, unlocking the door and guiding her in. She turned, stunned. "What are you talking about?" "You've outgrown Shaw and Grant," he said. "And you know it." "That's not true. You've been running half the digital strategy department for months. Everyone knows it. Now it's time you lead your own." He handed her a leather-bound folder. Inside were business registration documents she hadn't seen before. Her name was printed at the top. Kendrick and Company. Marketing. She blinked. "You already filed everything? I wanted to surprise you." She stared at the paperwork, then looked up slowly. "You're serious? I'm not giving you anything you didn't already build. I just clear the path." Tears welled in her eyes, but she shook her head, laughing softly. "I can't believe you did this. You can run it from here, or from the city, or from wherever we end up." He took her hands. "We'll figure it out together." She stepped into his arms, holding him tightly. "You have no idea how much this means to me." "I think I do," he whispered. Later that night, after the last guests had gone and the stars burned high above them, they lay wrapped in a blanket on the balcony of the estate's master suite. The lake shimmered below, the trees rustling like a lullaby. "Do you ever think about how strange it is?" she asked, tracing slow circles on his chest. "What is?" "That all of this started with a dying phone and a charger." He laughed, the sound low and content. "I think about it every day. How close I came to missing you." She tilted her head up. "You really think we would have found each other some other way?" "No," he said. "I think fate only knocks once. You have to be paying attention." She smiled, curling closer to him. "I'm glad I was awake." He kissed her forehead. "You woke me up too." They didn't speak for a long time after that. There was nothing more to say, only the quiet hum of a life fully lived, fully chosen. And as the moon rose high over the water and the wind slipped through the trees like a whispered promise, Nora closed her eyes knowing she had everything she never thought she'd find. Love that didn't ask her to shrink. A future she built with her own hands. And a man who had once ruled an empire but now ruled her heart. Forever.